So, Common Charity 2 just wrapped up, and I want to say congratulations to either Wu Train or Diamond Dude. Why don't I know the exact winner? Because I might be filming this before they've actually played their finals match. Gotta be there first when Joseph Rothschild is on your tail. Hey all, Stevie here. Just want to make a little wrap-up video regarding Common Charity and how Common Charity 2 sort of wrapped up. So first I want to talk about some of the highlights and some of the lowlights, things that turned out super well and things that kind of turned out pretty cringe. So let's talk about the Pogs. Let's talk about the decks that did super well first. So, let's talk about the deck breakdown first. 10 people were on Tenyi, Lunalight was on 6 players, 5 people were on Melfi, 4 people were on Cyberdragon, surprisingly. I guess because people really wanted to play like the trap version, because the structure that came out and a lot of cards in that were, I guess, common? Anyways, 4 people were on Paleo, 3 people were on Grand Maju, and a bunch of people were on a lot of other garbage. And then you'll see in the top cut representation, a ton of people ended up converting with Lunalight. 3 people converted with Lunalight with a 50% conversion rate. 1 person topped with Tenyi, 1 person topped with Melfi, 1 person topped with Pendulum. Shout out to Jacob. 1 person topped with Sidra of all things. I really don't think this is a really good strategy, but fuck me, I guess. And 1 person topped on 60 card Paleo. How the fuck? So the first deck I want to talk about is Lunalight. Lunalight by far, by a mile, is the best deck in the format. It's got a very powerful OTK. Every card in the deck is actually at 3, except for Tiger, which is, literally banned. It has a powerful boss monster, great turn 1 plays that is overall extremely consistent. You're going to see that overall, between all these decks, that consistency is going to be a massive trend into whether or not a deck is good or not. Pendulum also ended up being another amazing breakout star of the format. It was piloted by Jacob YGL into top 4 of the event, and it has some amazing adaptability and the ability to organically get rid of cards, thanks to Dragon Pit and Dragon Pulse being able to remove problematic back row, which was littered across the format, as well as some problematic floating monsters that may be on the board. And it's one of the only decks that's actually able to organically set up a negate, because Vortex is a common. Crazy. Melfi was also another very powerful deck. It was experimented on in the first cup and between rounds 1 and 2, but it ended up being an amazing advantage engine and able to have used very powerful cards such as Rescue Cat. Kalantosa loops are also incredibly powerful when you're able to do those turn after turn after turn, as well as extremely consistently. This deck's extreme consistency, again, is a major factor in its ability to grind right out of the starting gate and why it did so well. Paleo ended up topping this event. This garbage 60 card variant that I have no idea topped, it managed to do well. I guess if you're a skilled enough pilot, you could just basically make fucking AK-47s out of scrap metal. Who would have guessed that trap cards are good? Mannequin Cat also ended up serving as enough of a payoff, as well as having enough access to these amazing trap cards such as the Paleos, like Deinamiscus and Olenoids, and all the Solemns and Torrentials and blah 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 blah. Ended up to being able to carry it to a top 8 finish, just having enough of that solid centralized good stuff core, even if the list was overall a little bit sus. A deck that ended up bubbling is actually Megalith. Now this deck list is a little sussy because setting up full Baithor loop seems extremely good, because it is. It's actually like a realized strategy, like the TCG. You'll see Gage doing a Prog and fuck it up somehow. But despite its ability to be much more explosive and OTK right out of the starting gate, it's got really difficult consistency issues because you're running Garnets, and you'll notice that in almost every single top cut list, there aren't any real Garnets. And the Garnets that you do open are soft Garnets, not really like hard Garnets where they're sort of fucking up entire plays. Whereas in Megalith, you're kind of boned. Let's talk about some of the trap cards that saw some success. We've got Threatening Roar. Threatening Roar kind of acted just as like a general stun card against like Lunalight and Grand Maju, probably the 2 most prevalent OTK strategies, and it was really good at doing that. Dimensional Barrier was also a really nice card to side in against strategies like Lunalight or maybe Synchro Spam decks. Spoiler alert, the latter didn't do very well. But overall, Dimensional Barrier served more not as like a floodgate so you could just follow up OTK on the next turn, but more of just like a Threatening Roar 2 for the main phase, if you want to think of it like that. Solemns and Torrentials obviously were just extremely powerful. Who would have guessed that cards that are good in Advanced are good in limited formats? Crazy. When we're talking about removal for very powerful boss monsters, nothing's beating tribute removal, and tribute removal was everywhere in this format, but not as much as people originally thought. People were citing a lot of kaijus, obviously, but one of the best cards in this format ended up being Lava Golem. Lava Golem was played in both main and side decks, and based on player testament, it overperformed. It was actually like really good. Another really powerful tool ended up being board breakers. Cards like Pankratops are obviously everywhere. It was just an extremely powerful card. Like, it's fucking Pankratops, who would have guessed? Forbidden Chalice just for generic negation, Dark Hole for clearing up boards that didn't really have any real protection or anything. Twin Twister and Trunade were actually really powerful decks for decks such as Lunalight and Cyber Dragon, surprisingly, who managed to top 8 sneak in. Allowed them to OTK much more easily and just sort of keep up their resource OTK loop without any real fear of disruption. Some really interesting extra deck options were Tornado Dragon and Light Dragon at Imposter. These are obviously just the back row and monster removal cards respectively, just generic really good rank 4s that decks like Lunalight were able to play, but especially Time Thief Redoer. Time Thief Redoer ended up probably being the best extra deck monster that wasn't named Lunalight Leo Dancer. It turns out that just having this recurrable guy just come in and out that's able to even equip trap cards that could just spin literally every single boss monster back into the deck that wasn't named Powerload Ogre kind of was enough for a lot of strategies, and you'll notice in a lot of these lists they're playing ways to summon Redoer with a trap. It's really good. Some bits of weird pieces that I can't really super categorize were actually Crimson Fox. Crimson Fox ended up being like a really nice card, and specifically Lunalight as a sort of targeting protection, as well as acting as sort of like an honest in making your opponent just kind of die in the battle phase. Who would have guessed that the OTK deck likes more ways to OTK and have protection for their boss monster? Shade Brigandine was also an amazing card, played in almost like every single list that was trying to make like a Redoer with a trap card. Again, Redoer with a trap. Really powerful, really crazy stuff. And Denko Sekka was actually only able to be played in like Pendulum, but where it was normal summon, it basically kind of just like won the game, because who would have guessed that a Floodgate for back row in a relatively back row centric format would be really good. So we've got two engines that I really want to highlight. We've got the Ostinato Melodious engine. This engine is basically able to use Ostinato as sort of like a fusion destiny to go into Bloom Diva, who is kind of just like a Towers, but better in the fact where it can like deal battle damage, just like it can't be destroyed by anything. It's just this generic extra deck option that turned out to be like really good. And shout out to the Lunalight player who ended up playing it. I guess you really like Duel Links. And Proofinese plus Blackout. Now, for those of you who don't know what Proofinese is basically a normal summon that banishes a trap card from your deck and increases the level by 1 as a result. Now, with Proofinese banishing Sword Soul Blackout, you can kind of see where this is going. Proofinese becomes a level 5, Blackout summons a level 4 tuner token, and you're able to soup the two into Ravenous Croco Dragon, who's basically just the world's worst Trident plus Upstart. Is it good? Yeah, probably for this format. Like, shit, that's cool. Now let's talk about some stuff that sort of flopped. We've got Goki. Goki was kind of like the best deck when people were originally looking at this format, because people were like jizzing themselves over double Powerload Ogre, but it actually didn't even see that much representation. Probably because people found it really boring, but yeah, only one person played it in this event. And I think people are just realizing that this deck is really boring and really easy to be sided into because of cards like Lava Golem and Kaijus that are everywhere. Gren Maju was kind of like this deck that me and a bunch of other people brewed up as sort of like this blind stun strategy, but turns out when most of the stun cards are kind of like limited and you don't really have as much consistency because cards like Extravagance are not really legal in this format, Gren Maju kind of just becomes like a worse Lunalight OTK deck that has maybe like a slightly better turn 1 play. Time Thieves is a deck that I also brewed up that saw no representation. Redo or Pass ended up being really good though, so I'll take credit for that one. Volcanic was really bad. I don't know why Joseph was so keen on saying that Volcanic was good, just because most of the cards are common. Like, you could bring an actual Volcanic deck into this format, it would still probably do shit, just because Volcanic is that bad. It's way too slow, and too many decks in this format can just kind of play through Scattershot, because nothing is hyper reliant on everything like being on the board. It could just be like, oh damn, I got Raigeki, I guess I'll just wait until the next turn. Unless you're getting Lunalight OTK. A lot of people were really hyped about these really explosive combo decks because they saw that hand traps were kind of fading out of the format. but you're gonna see really quick that synchro spam decks ended up being kinda dog shit. Fabled ended up flopping despite being able to set up triple Blazar Dragon because it was just that inconsistent. I think it literally needed like a 5-card combo. Resonators needed a 4-card combo, and it still sucked. Like, who would have guessed? Black Wings also failed because it's fucking Blackwing. Bro, why are you playing this shit?
Why don't we play Blackwing?
I want to dedicate an entire little section to Tenyi. Now, a lot of people thought that Tenyi was going to be like the best deck going into this format, but Lunalight ended up also just destroying Tenyi. Lunalight has such an amazing Tenyi matchup that Tenyi kind of just can't really do anything about it. A lot of low-skilled pilots that ended up piloting Tenyi against Lunalight ended up just getting wiped out, and the one Tenyi player that managed to sneak into Top Cut only did so because he specifically was A, good at the deck, and B, built their deck to only beat Lunalight. And it ended up kind of working out, but not as much as you'd like because that matchup is still pretty 50-50. Some trap cards that ended up flopping include Royal Decree. Royal Decree ended up being not really that good. I don't really know why. I guess just because no one really wanted to side in Royal Decree. Royal Decree is only really good on your turn 1 where you're going first and you're able to set your own Royal Decree and then flip it on your opponent's like end phase when they set 5. But the big problem with that is A, you kind of have to be going against like a back row deck where you're gonna kind of see that maybe only like half of the decks in this format are really like back row centric, and even though they don't really care about their traps, they just kind of play them because they're good, like Melfi. However, Royal Decree just kind of ended up being like a flop in the side deck. Waking the Dragon also ended up being a sort of like tech choice, and as the guy said, the paleo guy, I remember I talked to him, he resolved it once in the mirror. He lost. So that should just tell you everything you need to know about Waking the Dragon. So boss monsters that ended up really underperforming are surprisingly Sahas Rasa and Tenyi. Tenyi kind of needed to really overextend to summon this boss monster, and the issue was you kind of just immediately lost to like a Kaiju, a Lava Golem, or Lunalight. And Vanity's Fiend / Vanity's Ruler ended up being really bad in Tenyi because guess what? When every deck is running like removal options like Paleozoic Deinobiscus and like other garbage, like who would have guessed that your monster that has literally no protection and you can't ever really protect is gonna die really fast and you're gonna cry. What I think the biggest surprise of this entire event ended up being, despite how relatively combo-centric this format ended up being, hand traps kind of sucked. Hand traps flopped really hard, especially cards like Ash Blossom and Valor. Most decks didn't really need their turn 1 plays to go off because the format was overall very slow, as well as people being on a lot of defensive trap cards. So people were just like, oh damn, I got hand trapped, I guess I'll just set pass. What are you gonna do? OTK me? And then you realize you're against Lunalight, and then you still kind of fucking die. Some hand traps saw like relatively okay play. Stuff like DD Crow was good against Lunalight, but people ended up realizing that the best hand traps are Floodgates. Floodgates were the only good hand traps that ended up being played, so Lancea and Chaos Hunter saw success as anti-Tenyi cards and able to shut out certain Lunalight cards, such as Lunalight Perfume. So what are the overall takeaways from Common Charity? Lunalight by far ended up being the best deck. I don't think anyone really didn't see this coming, but I think everyone misjudged like how oppressive it was going to be. Like 50% of Lunalight players converted into Top Cut. That's how good it was. However, it's no means like a tier 0 deck. Kaijus, Trapridor, Borolo Dragon, and even to an extent like just Pendulum in general do incredibly well when it comes to outing their Leo Dancer and their overall strategies, as well as kind of just making them go first and like hoping that they can't really play through your board breakers. Tenyi is a lot less powerful than people originally thought with its malleability in multiple lines, especially with the power of Sahas Rasa in a vacuum seeming like, oh, this is just like the best fucking deck. However, the plethora of non-targeting removal in, again, Kaijus and Lava Golem ended up proving that, damn, this shit sucks, as well as just that horrible Lunalight matchup. There's still a lot of discovery going on in the format, both when it comes to discovering new strategies and optimizing current ones, such as Crawler and Pendulum respectively, and I can't wait for those to be optimized for CC3, where I can just steal Joseph's content again. Thank you guys for watching, and remember, good luck, have fun.